Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, heart math practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi folks, welcome to episode 62 of the podcast. My guest today is Petra Brunnbauer, and we're talking about holistic healing modalities for chronic pain. First, a bit about Petra. She's a well-being coach, a podcast host, and the creator of the Jorni well-being platform. After spending over a decade as a management executive in Canada, Petra relocated to France in 2017. In 2018, she created the Jorni Wellbeing platform after a transformative personal experience inspired her to continue her own journey of healing and personal development in psychology and mental health. Petra supports women on their journey of healing from stress, burnout, and chronic pain through the innovative Jorni framework. Her mission is to empower individuals across the globe to reclaim their mental, physical, and emotional well-being and to make holistic healing accessible for everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Petra.
Thank you so much, Emma. And I'm listening to the introduction. I have to smile because we've come such a long way, even with the journey, just starting out thinking, oh, there needs to be something better for people. There needs to be something where people can go when they're not feeling well. So yeah, it's kind of neat to look back and see what we've come up with. So thank you so much for having me today. I've been so excited to come and talk to you.
Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I think this is an important conversation to have. There are lots of people living with stress, burnout, and sometimes as a result of that chronic pain, which is what we're going to talk about. And I'm curious if you could start us off by sharing why you have an interest in chronic pain and what brought you to the place you're at now with starting the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back with that a little while. My first encounter with chronic pain was after an accident in 2012. And I was a passenger in the car, and it hurt my right foot at the time. And for some reason that was not explicable by any of the medical tests that subsequently followed, the MRIs, the X-rays, the physical therapy, the chiropractor, nobody could explain why the pain from that accident was still there. And it stayed there for 8 years. So it had a huge impact on my mobility. It had a huge impact on the things that I could and couldn't do anymore outside or as far as sports went. I used to dance in my free time. It was a passion that had to completely stop. I couldn't impact the foot anymore. And it wasn't until we moved from Canada to France that in 2020, the pain finally went away. And it was one of those strange things where inexplicably, after a weekend of being outside and we were just kind of spending a day at the coast, I noticed that the pain wasn't there anymore. And that was a very bizarre encounter. So unfortunately, 3 months after that, I broke my other foot and then went through the same thing on the other side. And that's the chronic pain that I have been dealing with since that encounter. But I always had in the back of my mind that because actually the first time it had taken quite some time, but because the first time it had gone away, that there had to be some way of managing and maybe even eliminating this chronic pain. And so that's where my journey really started, into finding modalities and approaches and ways to not just get a handle on the actual physical pain that I was feeling, but to really explore the connection with my mental state, my emotional state, my physical state. Was there a connection between how I was feeling, my emotional experiences, what had been going on with me at the time that I broke my foot, psychologically, how did that all connect together? And what were the chances that I could actually make this go away. And so I became really interested in all of that. I did the study for my master's on chronic pain, and I'd like to explore more about maybe some therapy in chronic pain or different kind of avenues. But that's how I got started, is by sort of a lived experience on both of my feet and this really weird path of chronic pain that doesn't seem to make sense some of the time, where it's there, it moves, it then happens on the other side, on the other foot. So these are some of the experience that I'm not really alone in. I hear this a lot, but chronic pain in that sense, it often doesn't make any sense. It changes. It's at different levels at different times of the day. And that's why it's been so tricky, I think, to work with that, because it's such a complex issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm quite fascinated listening that you have managed to break both your feet.
Yeah. I'm not proud of it.
No, I don't mean it. I don't mean it like, oh, Petra, you're so clumsy. I, I just, I mean, in a metaphysical way, it's very interesting that of all the things you could break in your body, you've got a whole load
Yeah.
of other bones you could have broken the
Yeah.
second time round, and it was your other foot.
Yeah.
Do you have any insights that you're comfortable sharing about why that might be?
Yeah. So to do that, we have to dive a little bit more into the metaphysical realm. So, since there was no
Dive
medical
in.
explanation, I mean, that was, of course, when I broke the foot, the
Mm,
initial fracture, right? So that was painful and that was to be expected. But after the cast came off and x rays and MRIs verified that the bone actually was fine, then the pain continued. That part medically didn't make any sense. And that's where the doctors were a bit stumped and, stamped the chronic complex regional pain syndrome on it. And that was it. So when I actually started looking at different ways to approach chronic pain, one of the things I ran across, I can't remember even who it was. I know part of it was Louise Hay, but there was also some other things that I was looking at. And it kind of went into the direction that when you have foot trouble,
hmm
that that's sort of the things that they're involved in the movement and the forward projection of yourself. So either a fear of moving forward, a fear of kind of taking the next step,
hmm
or also it just being too much, that you're doing too much. You need to slow down, because
hmm
if your feet are hurt, you can no longer run forward, right? So you're kind of like you're forced to take a break in a sense. And
hmm
I, looking back, I think those make sense on some mental, emotional level for me,
Yeah.
because I was very busy both of the times that that happened. I had a lot going on in my life. Of course, second time was the pandemic. So there was that angle also where a lot of things changed and very different. And
hmm
we were a bit unsure about the future or what the next steps in that sense could be. So it does make sense looking at that. And it did force me to take a break in a very big sense, right?
Yeah.
When that happened, the first time I took a break of almost 8 years, and the
Yeah.
second time there were 3.5 years later. So it forced me to really slow down and kind of think of, okay, well, if I can't run forward, then what can I do? What do I want to do? And so I
hmm
think in that sense, that was part of it. Now, if we go to a more scientific explanation of it, for example, if we consider something like pain reprocessing therapy,
hmm
which deals with neuroplastic pain, in that sense, there usually is a component of fear involved in chronic pain. And because of that fear, the brain then learns to interpret signals that are not dangerous in a way that say, oh, it's pain, it's dangerous for you. So if we look at it from that angle, the fear, of course, the pandemic hit, the fear of what do we do with the business? How do we move forward with sales, with generating revenue? How do we move forward? We can't travel. When can we see our family again? Can we go outside? oh, you need a piece of paper, you can't go to the grocery store. Yeah, there was a lot of fear involved, and during especially that time when I broke my left foot. So I can see how fear and not feeling safe could really impact the brain into saying, okay, well, all the signals that now come from your foot are interpreted as dangerous because that's how you were feeling at the time when you broke it. So
Right.
maybe not consciously, but maybe on a subconscious level, even the first time there was some type of fear involved
Mm.
when I had the car accident. I mean, there's always some, if you're an entrepreneur, there's always some uncertainty about the future and things like
Yeah.
that you're worrying about. So
Uh-huh.
um, fear is usually there. But yeah, so if we look at it from that standpoint, and we think of all different kinds of chronic pain, you know, it doesn't have to be foot pain, it can be back pain, neck pain, even fibromyalgia and
Mm.
headaches, repetitive strain injuries, all sorts of chronic pain that, especially when we're working with pain reprocessing therapy, there is a component of fear usually in those pain signals. So
Yeah.
that's a bit more of the scientific, but I can see it from both angles. I can see it from the more metaphorical angle of needing to slow down, and then also
Mm.
from the scientific part of there is a component of feeling unsafe at some point.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious as to what you think shifted in your mindset and your thinking when you went to France and then the pain stopped.
Yeah, it, it was quite bizarre, but you know, it was, and I remember the day that we went out. We had been here for some years. We moved in 2017, so we had been here for about 3 years in that summer. And it was difficult to go anywhere because of the pandemic. And so, for the first time, and I think the shutdown here happened in March of that year. And so that was in August. So, for the first time that year, we decided, well, if we can't go anywhere, we're just going to go outside because we're allowed to go outside. And so we packed up the car, we made our own sandwiches because you couldn't go to any of the restaurants or anything. We packed up everything that we needed. And I made kind of a plan on the computer at home with all of the forts and all of the castles that we could find along that stretch of the coast. And that's what we were going to do that day. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't care how badly my foot hurts. I don't care if I have to ice it in the car after. I don't care if it doesn't fit in my shoe later. It's the only time this year that we have gotten to go anywhere fun and do anything fun, and I'm going to enjoy myself no matter what. That was the mindset that I went out with that morning.
Mm.
When we got there. The first castle was actually on a bit of an island, and you had to kind of track across this rocks and kind of piece of beach when the tide was out to go over there. And I looked at that stretch of rock and it was so uneven. And I thought to myself, okay, you're never going to make this to the other side. This is going to hurt so badly. But the fort on the other side looked so cool. And you could go inside it. And it was on this hill. And it was ruins, you know, but still really cool. You could climb up to the second floor. And I was like, I'm going over there. I don't care what happens. I'm like, this might be the only fort that I'll be seeing this year. So I'm going over there. And it was a bit of a shift of just not caring anymore
Huh.
and being okay with the fact that the pain was there. And that's, I think, what really shifted it. I didn't worry about how many ice packs I would need later or how many days off I would need to put my foot up after. I was just like, all caution to the wind. I'm doing this because I might not get another chance this year.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's what really shifted. I was all of a sudden okay with it just being there. For better or for worse, I just didn't care anymore. And that later I learned is being okay with the pain being there is actually a big component in working with it.
Yes.
I didn't know that at the time, but yeah, that's what shifted. I got out of that car and I was like, I'm going to that island. I don't care what happens. So
Yeah. And I just think that's a great example of the role our thinking plays in pain, whether that's physical pain or emotional pain, is we get caught up in the worrying about it, which tends to heighten it. And it's very interesting what I hear you say is you just got very present and when I'm going to do this regardless, and just that letting go and that surrendering, I imagine a lot of the tension in your body must have just dropped away. And it's very interesting because my knowledge from reading Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk's books is that our bodies store trauma and it can manifest as pain. And the process of being able to let go of that trauma helps us to release the pain. Before we jump into that, which is very interesting, could you just give a bit of an overview as somebody who has lived with and is living with the foot pain at the moment? What's the general mainstream medical treatment plan for chronic pain? I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to let you elaborate.
Yeah. So my pain probably is similar and different to other chronic pain. So I mean, of course, if you have individuals who are dealing with cancer or some, there's different forms of chronic pain, but mine was definitely a structural kind of pain. There was a hairline fracture in the first accident and then a full fracture in the second accident. So definitely a structural type of chronic pain. So from that standpoint, of course, the medical system, the first time around, they didn't want to put a cast because it was sort of in a bone that was locked in the foot that didn't move very much. So they didn't think it was actually going to fracture anymore. So I got to wear the little air boot thing. And after that, it was painkillers. Here, take these painkillers. And it was in Canada at the time. So had it not been for the fact that it was a car accident and was covered by the car insurance, I probably wouldn't have received any other treatment because you have to pay for that out of pocket. Because it was a car accident and I was not at fault, the insurance paid for physiotherapy, it paid for the chiropractor, it actually paid for me to travel down to the US and have some kind of cryotherapy or something as well. And those were kind of the extent of the first, I would say, 6 to 8 months. And then when it didn't get any better, and when the MRIs showed a little bit of fluid buildup on the bottom where the tendon kind of goes on the bottom of the foot. But other than that, it was completely normal. There was nothing else to be seen, no other fractures, nothing that would have said, okay, you should continue to have pain. And at that point, it was like, okay, well, you can continue to take painkillers, but there's really nothing else that we can do for you. We don't know why this is happening. And interestingly enough, I also wasn't referred to any kind of pain clinic or pain psychologist or anything like that. So I just didn't know enough back then to kind of advocate for myself and say I want those things. And I'm not sure if that would have even been possible because I don't think there is a center where we lived at the time, but none of that happened. And the second time around, I was in France. So the medical care here is splendid. I was in and out with the cast in like less than 90 minutes. It was super efficient. So, that the medical part was great. But again, when the pain didn't go away and when the cast came off and a few weeks later I was supposed to drive, but I couldn't even walk. And medically, the bone had healed. There was nothing to see on the x-ray. Then they did an MRI. I went to see a foot specialist. There's nothing apparent why this was still hurting. And at some point, I kind of also got the feeling that a bit of, oh, you're just making this up. And I'm like, well, why would I make this up? I don't get any benefit. I still have to work and everything. I don't get any benefit of having a sore foot, right? But yeah, then I got prescribed lidocaine patches for the foot. And I was referred to a pain psychologist at the pain center here. And she was a rheumatologist and she basically prescribed the lidocaine patches. She said, okay, you can put these on every night for 12 hours and that will manage your pain. And I had a few appointments there and that was kind of the extent of it. And to me, the lidocaine patches are not really a solution. They're just that, they're patches. So they're like band-aids that I'm putting on the pain, but I'm not actually working towards eliminating it. And I don't want to stick those on for the rest of my life.
No.
So that was kind of that. And from there, there was just a bit of at an end of the medical wisdom, and we don't know why this is still happening.
Yeah.
It happens a lot because they have a pain clinic, and obviously there's people there, so I'm not the only one.
Mm.
But the why of all of this, or how do we fix it, just there was not much more after that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think listening to you talking, you can see how people end up dependent on oxycodone and all of those things that are prescribed. And I think with a lot of my understanding of painkillers is that generally they start to build up a tolerance to them, so then you need more and it becomes a vicious cycle. And if you're under resourced, you're going to go and get the opioids. There's no pain clinic for you. And I think this is the trouble, isn't it? We're dealing with an epidemic of people who are suffering from pain that is the medical profession just said, well, we've exhausted we don't know what to do. And it's actually starting to unravel the thinking processes behind it and the psychological pieces of it, which I know is what you're doing in the Jorni platform that you've got. So could you share a little bit more about your framework that you've got and how you help clients holistically deal with chronic pain?
Yeah, so the chronic pain component is something new that we've added this year after my experience, and I became really curious about it. And the way that I like to approach it is through finding out what actually happened, not just on a physical level, but emotionally, mentally, on a social level. What is happening in the environment with the family relationships? Because everything, even say for example that financially you're really stressed out, and that's been a stress that you've had for a long time, well, that can impact you physically also on so many levels, right? But your doctor never asks you like, how's your financial situation? So um, just really understanding what the individual's situation is like and what it has been like, and what kind of factors there could be that are all kind of tying into pain that's being experienced. And again, this needs to be medically checked. You need to have your scans, your MRIs, whatever it is, that your doctor does. You need to know that there isn't nerve damage or cancer pain or any of those kind of things. But if the pain turns out to be neuroplastic, which is the brain is involved in creating those signals, then it can be worked with on a psychosomatic level where we can figure out why the brain is creating those signals and then help retrain the brain. So it goes through firstly figuring the situation out. I also like to, at the same time, work with the nervous system. A lot of individuals I found that have chronic pain have a very dysregulated nervous system, be that from trauma or their own emotional experiences. So working with techniques alongside that, I love using heart math. I love heart math. So different kind of techniques alongside the pain reprocessing therapy to really understand how can we regulate, how can we get back into a place where we can feel safe. And then in that place, we can start addressing, the retraining of the brain signals. But I think as long as people are in a state of fear or in a state of feeling unsafe, where they're just very heightened and kind of always on in their nervous system, I think it's hard to come to that place where you're going to start retraining the brain. So there's a bit of work to be done before that to make sure people are actually in a space where that retraining can take place. And so in the framework, that's what we take people through. We take them on this journey. I'm gonna make the pun here, but we take them on the journey really of through that whole, let's see what's going on in your life. Let's make sure that you're in a place where we can actually start addressing the pain signals, and then going to the part where we start helping the brain learn that we're safe and that it doesn't need to send those signals anymore to keep us safe. So yeah, it's bit of a longer process, not very long, but taking the time to really, I feel like when you go to the doctor, you have that kind of 20-minute slot, and if you can't fit it all in there, then you're just kind of out of luck and you have to take another appointment. And that's not very conducive to really understanding what the situation is or to really start working on the nervous system. So it does take some time to kind of bring your body back into that state of alignment. But once you kind of have the tools and you do that and you work on that, then the door is open to retraining the brain on the pain signals as well.
Yeah, and I think I think what makes this challenging when you're looking at things from a holistic point of view is it isn't a quick fix. And I think that's where that's where I think medication can be really useful if you're using it. I mean, this goes for mental health stuff. If you're using it alongside a holistic plan, I think nobody should be suffering and thinking, oh, I have to try and kind of do this and be in pain the whole time. But I think there needs to be a plan. And my experience has been a little bit similar with going to the doctor and you just get prescribed something because they're short of time. They don't have time to sit and do a lifestyle inventory and how are you feeling and is something stressing you out. And I think that's what's missing, because sometimes if somebody comes in and they tell you actually they're feeling in pain or they're feeling really depressed, there's not a question of did something happen to trigger this. It's just here's something to put a band-aid on how you're feeling. And I think this is where the personal development work with your journey framework, with the coaching work that you and I both do comes into play, is having a look at how do we look at the bigger picture. So in the long run, we can get this healed so you don't have to exist in pain. It's because that's no life for anybody. It's a horrible state to be in. And of course, you're talking about nervous system regulation. If you are in pain, like you said, when you went to the fort and suddenly it felt it felt better because you just let go of it. If you're clutching onto it and you're in tension the whole time, it makes it worse. And we need to be able to learn to get to a state of getting back in touch with our bodies. And I think so many people are just disconnected from the neck downwards because we're not really taught to listen to our bodies and listen to our gut signals and all of those things. So I think the holistic work is so important, but it's a journey over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you can have small transformations in 1 or 2 sessions. You learn tools and you can apply them and you maybe have less reaction throughout the day, or you start noticing some changes. But I completely agree. It is something that you practice and that you work with, and you deepen how you listen to your body and make that connection again. And definitely all of this can be and should be used alongside whatever medical advice that you're getting.
Correct. Yes.
And if you're on medication, you stay on that medication, you talk to your doctor, but this can be used alongside that, so that if you want to explore something different or you want to have some more tools in your toolbox, then you have that at your fingertips as well. So there is a place for Western medicine, no doubt. And there also is sort of the opportunity to look outside of that and to explore what else is available. And very often in chronic pain, there just aren't the resources or the time in the medical system to properly support every individual with chronic pain. And so, especially in those cases, looking outside of the medical system can have maybe opportunities that people haven't explored before, they haven't looked or even heard of. So, especially in those cases, I think there is an opportunity to provide services that might be very helpful when there just isn't the time or the resources in the medical field.
Yeah, and I say I am not bashing doctors or medication. It's just I think we have to look further than that being the final solution to what's happening with something like chronic pain and with mental illness, because we need to be equipped, and there are the tools out there for us to equip ourselves to be able to really empower ourselves to make change. I think it's about taking that power back, is you don't have to be reliant on just getting a prescription and that's where the road ends and you can't have anything else. There are a lot of modalities that are available that can, like we said, that can support alongside that. Before we wrap up, I just would like you to share a little bit about your emotion code work. I know we've done some sessions, and I know it's in your arsenal of tools that you use for your clients alongside the chronic pain. You also help people who are stressed and who are burnt out. Could you share a little bit more about emotion code? Because I've personally found it really, really useful as a modality for the sessions that we've done. Just tell the listeners a little bit about that, Petra, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I love the emotion code. So, yeah, and of course all the other parts that go with it, like the body code and the belief code. But basically, the premise of the emotion code is that as we have different kind of emotional experiences that are a bit too much for us, they overwhelm us in some sense. There is a possibility that those emotions become trapped and they stick around and they have frequencies that they vibrate at and they are stuck in our body. And the body vibrates, obviously, different organs vibrate at different other frequencies. And so when you have these trapped emotions in there, they can really mess with the frequencies and they can mess with us mentally, physically. They can kind of cause issues. So the emotion code helps us discover what these trapped emotions are and then release them so that the body can actually get back to what it does best, and that is working optimally and healing itself. So we are kind of removing some of the obstacles, that are standing in the path of our own healing. And this is based on energy work and the premise that, of course, as a human body, we are energy. We have electricity, we have, positive and negative charges in our body. We have an electromagnetic field, we vibrate at different frequencies. So it makes sense that considering that we are energetic beings, that we can affect change and healing on an energetic level. And so the emotion code taps in exactly there and helps us find these. And the more negative emotions, when we think of, for example, like anger, shame, guilt, like a lot of the more negative emotions, those vibrate at very low frequencies. So if we look at the hertz spectrum, they actually vibrate sometimes, I think, like 50 hertz and even lower. And when we look at the more what we perceive to be positive emotions like joy and happiness and love and gratitude, then those vibrate at much, much higher frequencies. And so it's actually these lower frequencies that these emotions vibrate at that kind of mess up how the body functions properly and interferes and blocks the body's healing process and what frequencies we would usually vibrate at. So it's good to remove those blockages. It's good to kind of get the energy working properly again. And for those to whom this sounds a little bit out there, a little bit wacky, just keep in mind that we in fact are energy, and this is measurable, this is testable, this is backed by science. Our cells have positive and negative charges. We can measure the electromagnetic field around the heart, which it's quite large actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can also find out how we're vibrating on the hertz spectrum. So these aren't really these kind of made up science things. These are evidence backed things that we can prove. So working on these, I think, is an important part of keeping ourselves healthy and of taking charge of some of the things that we can do for just a better well-being and feeling better in our bodies. So
Yeah.
that's part of what I also love working with, is understanding what kind of trapped emotions people have and then releasing them, releasing them back so that people can get rid of those blockages. And amazing things happen. People experience all kinds of changes in their lives after that, and both on the emotional, mental, but also in the physical part. So, yeah, I think it's a really beautiful approach to work with, and one that doesn't just focus on our physical selves, but also takes into account that we also are energetic beings, and I love that part.
Yes, I love that part as well. And I found the sessions we did really, really useful because I felt a lot light. I know we shifted a whole load of negative stuff in my session, but I felt a lot lighter afterwards. And it's easy. we were talking about, a personal development journey and a healing journey, a holistic one. It's ongoing for a lifetime. However, there are modalities that you can use that will help make shifts happen quickly. And it just helps to move you along the path a little bit faster. So yes. Are you offering those? Can people book those sessions with you at the moment? Is that something you're offering?
So all of the sessions that we offer, the pain reprocessing therapy, the emotion code, I also have the EFT tapping, and we do parts of the EM yoga. So all of those sessions are part of the journey itself. So I don't offer them one on one, but we do put them in our group programs, and individuals who are working with us in those get to choose which sessions, appeal to them or what they would like to try out. So they are part of the journey programs, or they will be part of the journey programs coming up. So that's kind of how we have those available if people would like to try them. Of course, if there is someone listening who is in absolute dire need and wants to have a session, absolutely contact us, and we will see what we can do for you and how we can offer that to you. But the majority of all of those techniques they're kind of tied in with the coaching that we offer, so that individuals actually have a journey that they go on, and we don't just kind of stick them in a session and then they're left there. So
Yeah.
that they have an experience where they're finding the support and the encouragement and some kind of path to their goal of where they'd like to end up, be that managing their chronic pain or lowering their stress levels, or working on burnout, so that they have some kind of path where they can see that they're actually coming to that goal. So makes it I think, a little bit easier to find the transformation and the shifts if you have that support.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's with any modalities where you're doing healing work and you're doing personal development work, it's so important to have the support as you integrate, because I think a lot of the actual transformation happens in the integration afterwards, where you go, oh, I'm normally triggered by something and I just haven't been anymore. That's really interesting. And it's having that coaching support to be able to notice that, because sometimes I think we don't always notice the shifts we've made, and we don't always know how to integrate the new tools we've got into up leveling ourselves. So I think that's such an important part of it. Could you share where people could find you? So anyone who's listening to this is like, wow, I'm really curious about this journey. Could you share where people can find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love for listeners to come join us on the journey. We have a lot of different things available and different approaches for sort of anywhere that you're at, where we can meet you and help you kind of find out what it is that you'd like to do, and how to get there. And you can find us, probably the best place is to check our website. We do post anything that's available at any given time on the site. So often we have free courses that are running. We also have paid courses that are running, but everything that we have will be on the website. And that is thejourney.com. And journey, of course, is spelled Jorni. So it sounds like journey, but it's spelled just a little bit differently. So thejourney.com, and you'll find everything that we have available on there. And we also do have a community on Facebook, which is free. So, and that's on the website too, but you can join us there if you'd like to have some support from individuals who are also going through their own healing journeys, or if you have questions. We do mini demos in there and mini coachings. So if you're just looking to dip your toes in and find out more, that's also a very good place to come and find that.
Amazing. I'll put links to the website and also the Facebook group in the show notes as well. So people, if you're listening, just jump in, go and have a look at the show notes, and you can dive straight in and go and connect with Petra. Thank you. I always love talking to you. We could talk for probably a lot longer, so I'll wrap us up. Thank you very much for joining me and for sharing your story, and for talking through what I think is something that isn't talked about enough, is our well-being and our mental health and our physical health, I think we're sort of schooled into, to put on a brave face, and I think it's good to bring this out into the open. So thank you for sharing with me today.
Yeah, thank you for being such a wonderful and gracious host. As you said, I'm sure we could do another episode and just keep talking. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. Like you said, this is such an important topic, and many individuals suffer from chronic pain. So unfortunately, a really widespread challenge that many people deal with. And thank you for taking the time and letting me share about that. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. It was lovely to have you. Thank you for listening, folks. I'll be back with another podcast episode next week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends, and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.